covers the Philippines, and NPR's Daniel Estrin in Jerusalem. All three of you, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary Louise.
Thank you. All right, Joanna, you start. This week, on Monday, Hungary's parliament passed new emergency powers for Prime Minister Orban. What exactly can he do now that he couldn't before?
Well, he can do pretty much whatever he wants. This is a very sweeping law, and it sidelines Parliament and lets Viktor Orban rule by decree. And what that means is that his government can do whatever it deems necessary to fight the coronavirus, which officially has infected at least 585 people and killed at least 21. And theoretically, Parliament, can vote to end these powers, but that's not going to happen because Orban's party Fidesz controls 2/3 of Parliament. And another concern is that there's no sunset clause in this law. So there's serious concern that this one-man rule is going to go on indefinitely because the law also suspends elections. Orban has invoked emergency law before. In 2015. He gave police free rein during the European migration crisis. And his majority in Parliament just keeps renewing that law. So now there's concern Orban will just do the same with this pandemic law.
Wow, so election suspended. Doesn't sound like there's a sunset clause. Julie, how does that compare to what's happening in the Philippines, where Congress has also granted emergency powers to the president, Rodrigo Duterte, to deal with COVID-19? What was in that bill? What can he do now?
Well, he can now take over private hospitals to quarantine healthcare workers and take over public transportation to get them to work. The COVID-19 has taken an alarming toll on health workers, particularly doctors. When it first arrived, Duterte played it down. But before long, he had ordered 50 million Filipinos locked down. You had to stay home. You still do. And this week, he condemned Filipinos who are harassing these hospital workers, which is happening because of the fear of this pandemic. But he's invoking the same harsh language we hear in his drug war. He's threatening to shoot anyone who creates, quote, chaos. And he has these new troubling powers to crack down on fake news. And critics say, look, that makes him the arbiter of the facts. It's prone to abuse and it chills the press.
Oh, that's interesting. Joanna, I'd love to hear a quick response to you on that one, because fake news is something that Viktor Orban in Hungary has been known to talk about. He was an early adopter of that term. Does he have more power over the press now?
Yes, he does. This new law amends the criminal code to introduce jail sentences of up to 5 years for intentionally spreading what the government deems fake news about the coronavirus pandemic. And this is worrying the few independent media outlets in Hungary because it's the government that gets to define what fake news is. And so they're expecting to get punished for just, publishing stories that question Orban's handling of the pandemic.
All right, let's turn to the Middle East and bring you in, Daniel, from Jerusalem. When the coronavirus appeared in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in a very uncertain space. There was an inconclusive election, another inconclusive election in Israel. Netanyahu had been indicted on corruption charges. He is now also finding ways in this moment to put himself on firmer political ground.
He has found firmer political ground. Before the virus, it seemed as if he might be on his way out of office because his opposition had the upper hand. His main opponent, Benny Gantz, was actually appointed to try to form the government. And then Netanyahu was days away from appearing in court to face bribery and fraud charges. So things were not looking good for Benjamin Netanyahu. And then the coronavirus crisis hit and his fortunes completely changed. He became the face of Israel's coronavirus response. He started appearing on TV nightly, basically giving him this bully pulpit where he addresses the cameras, he takes no questions from the press, and his government declared a coronavirus state of emergency.
I'll just note those TV briefings sound very familiar to those of us watching a president here in Washington also capitalize on coronavirus and TV briefings, but go on.
Right. Well, what happened in Israel was that most court activity was frozen because of the state of emergency. And then Netanyahu's corruption trial got postponed. His Speaker of Parliament then froze Parliament, where the center-left had a slight majority. And then the big moment happened. Netanyahu's opponent, Benny Gantz, simply folded. He said the coronavirus crisis required unity, and it looks like he's going to let Netanyahu stay in office.
So some shrewd maneuvering from all of the leaders you're describing there, which prompts me to ask, what are the remaining checks on their power? What is the pushback against any of these leaders? Joanna, you first again.